Donald, do you mind we could
No,
address
no,
to you some questions?
I love questions because it makes me think.
Are there questions among the audience? Persons who would have?
La idea de preguntar si hay algún tipo de estudio, algo, por ejemplo, el efecto de el vapor, los vaos, por ejemplo, en los ojos, para mejorar todo esto. Por ejemplo, hablábamos de calor directo con las compresas, las toallas, tal. Pero, por ejemplo, a nivel de hacer baños, por ejemplo, de vapor en los ojos, como una sauna, por ejemplo, ¿no? Pero concentrada en los ojos, ¿no? A nivel de calor por vapor de agua, por ejemplo. ¿Alguien un estudio, un tratamiento o algo? No sé si lo explico bien. Entonces, cuando una persona está resfriada, no es típico de hacer respirar vapor con determinadas, con eucalipto, lo que fuera y tal. Pues, por ejemplo, cara a los ojos, el hecho de vapor. Mi pregunta era si el hacer, por ejemplo, baños de vapor en los ojos, por ejemplo, es muy tradicional para la respiración, resfriados y tal, ¿no? Hacer inhalaciones de vapor, ¿no? Entonces lo mismo, pero en los ojos, la temperatura conseguida por vapor en los ojos. Si se ha utilizado, o hay algún tipo de estudio o algo, no sé, hablando de humedad y calor al mismo tiempo.
The question was really excellent. The question, as I understand it, was how does vapor fit in for the eyes? Okay. In some studies that we did, we showed 25 years ago that if we place vapor in the eye in a goggle, room temperature we increase our lipid layer thickness. So we increase our lipid layer thickness. And the reason for that is that we stopped evaporation pretty well. We all know that if you were to go into a steam bath, your eyes will feel better. And that was first reported by an Englishman named Ponder, P-O-N-D-E-R. And I believe the year was 1910, maybe, very, very early. And he studied the effect of heat and vapor on all species of animals, including those in the London Zoo. And I don't remember the exact results, but it was good. It was good. It increases it. So what we also know in the United States is that in the winter, eyes dry. We're very dry. And in the summer, it's much better because the humidity goes up. So the rate of evaporation from the eye increases almost 100% for every 10% change in relative humidity. So if we had 40% relative humidity and then we went down to 30, the rate of evaporation would double. And if we went down to 20%, it would double again. So it would be 4 times greater at 20% than it would be at 40%. I don't know of any studies which have, although they should be done, which have correlated the effect of heating the vapor that the eye is exposed to. But I would expect that there would be a beneficial effect because if we raise the temperature of the lids, the Meibomian glands will secrete more than if the lids are not raised. Now, very interestingly, we have not explained, there's just so many, without exaggeration, there's probably 25 different areas that I could have spoken on tonight, each one of which would have taken an hour or two from the studies. But what is very interesting is that the temperature of the temporal lids is lower than that of the nasal lids. And that correlates with their function. So you'd have to ask yourself the question, why don't all the Meibomi glands across the lids work evenly? So I mention that because temperature is a big factor. And it could well be that if you heated vapor in front of the eye, you would increase the secretion of the temporal glands much more than you would with most methods.
En aquests casos, la sauna podria ser aconsellable per aquests casos, recomanar unes sessions de sauna, no? De bany, com es diu? Bany turc? No, no exactament, no? La sauna, no?
The question is the difference between saunas and saunas and Turkish baths and steam rooms, you know.
Sí.
My figure, my physical figure since I've been doing this work is not as attractive as it was when I was 25. So I have not done much research in that area. I don't know much about that.
Después del tratamiento con calor, parece que ha contraindicado el masaje.
Okay, the question is, as I understand it, is that after heating the lids, massage is counterindicated.
To avoid.
We shouldn't do it, right. I'm sorry, I apologize, I wasn't clear. The lids, as we all know, massage is good, and massage therapy is good for many things, apparently. I'm not an expert in the field, but I know many competent physicians prescribe massage therapy for many ailments. However, the cornea is not made to be rubbed. The cornea is not made to be rubbed. So there are many papers now which clearly establish that rubbing is a dominant factor in creating keratoconus. So I think you can't deny that. So what happens is, when your eyes itch, many people rub. And as many people rub because they're dry, which in turn causes itching by various mechanisms, as are caused by the normal allergic type of mast cell release that you normally think of, that Steve Foster and you teach. So I think that's absolutely correct. So what we teach people is not to rub with your eyes closed. Not to rub with your eyes closed. When you rub with your eyes closed, there is a phenomenon called the polygonal reflex of Fischer, the man who discovered fluorescein, Schweiger, who was a German. And that reflex is the crocodile chagrin phenomenon that you see with fluorescein. So what you're doing is you're massaging the epithelial cells into the basement membrane. And Tony Braun in 1969 presented a fabulous paper with slides showing exactly how that worked. Tony Braun from London, from Oxford actually, the professor at Oxford. So when you rub, you have this polygonal reflex. So in some of our studies, which we published, and a young intern with me named Jessica Solomon is the first author on the paper, shows that when people had a blur after, they said they had a blur after warm compresses. So we would take them in the office and we would let them do the warm compress and they would be blurred. And we would measure their acuity and it would go from 20/20 to maybe 20/40, other people 20/50, as much as 2100. And it would take anywhere between 10 minutes and an hour for that to clear up. And all the data's in that paper. And we couldn't figure out what it was. So we checked for edema. There was no edema. We checked with confocal. Nothing by confocal. We checked with endothelial photography. Nothing. The endothelium wasn't changed. So what was causing it? And finally, the light went on, and we checked for the polygonal reflex, and it was there. So what would be happening is that even if the cornea is heated enough for a long period of time, with susceptible corneas, blinking must be able to go ahead and push the epithelium into the basement membrane and give you this pattern. So the summary, and we published Charles McMoney's questionnaire in Australia, is the world's authority on rubbing the past 20 years. And we gave a lot of the data and we shared it, and myself and Caroline Blackie and McMoney's, I think we published 2 papers explaining what happens in this phenomenon. So from a practical point of view, what do you do as a clinician? You tell people never to rub your eyes when they're closed. That will solve the problem. And if they have to rub, just take the lid, pull it down, and rub it against the orbital bones. Okay, does that answer the question, maybe?
Not at all.
Oh, not at all, okay? Let's try again then.
No, I was asking just to press and massage to express the gland. Yo preguntaba sobre la expresión de las glándulas justo después de la aplicación del calor. Si eso podía tener el efecto de masaje sobre la córnea y por tanto estar contraindicado.
Okay, well, the only time we express the glands is when we have a back plate against it. So we don't put any pressure on the cornea at all. So we express against a hard surface, a spatula, a Mastrada paddle, or a Q-tip. So we sandwich the lids between them, but we never press the lids hard against the eye.
At the office?
At the office, never, 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 no. We don't use as much force as scleral depression. We've measured it. Scleral depression can use up to about 4 pounds, 5 pounds of pressure, and it hurts. But no, we don't do that. We put something behind it.
Entonces el tratamiento es simplemente calor sin expresión.
The simple treatment, she asked, what is the treatment about heat? How do we use heat? Heat is given home to be used as warm compresses, okay? In the office, we don't treat with heat. We don't give people warm compresses. Now, some people in the United States give a patient a blephasteam treatment and charge them $150. We don't do that, because I don't think that's what we should be doing. But if we treat somebody in the office, we would give them cold expression. Now, it would be better if we had the time to heat the lids first for a half an hour and then express. That would be even better. But again, when we express in the office, there's always an instrument behind the lid, so there's no pressure going to the eye.
Entonces, ¿cuál es el tratamiento en casa? Completo.
What is the complete home treatment? Okay, you have to have a diagnosis. Okay, you have to have a diagnosis. Does the patient have lid seal? We're getting very good at that now, just like that. Does the patient have a lid seal? A lid seal is when the lid comes down, but it doesn't seal out the air. If the patient has a poor lid seal, you have to use an ointment at night, and if that doesn't work completely, then you have to have them wear sleep goggles. So about 25% of all patients that I see who are over age 50 have to wear sleep goggles every night, or they'll never get better because all night they're getting inflamed. So we have to treat that. And that in itself is a lecture. And a lot of people don't like to use ointment because they say I'm blurred at night. Well, I understand, but you have to, there's 2 ways of stopping the air from getting at the cornea. The first way is to put an ointment on to block it. after it's got in. And the second way is to put on a goggle so the air is 100% humidified, and that solves the problem. Then when the patient wakes up in the morning, they don't have any symptoms at all. Patients say, my eyes feel great when I wake up in the morning. And that's what everybody should say, okay? So if they have that problem, you have to treat. You have to treat that particular problem. If the patient is a partial blinker, you have to get them to blink well. Because if they don't blink well, again, what will happen? They'll relapse, no matter how well you treat them with expression, no matter how well you treat them with lipoflow. So there are many factors that go into that question. But the foundation, the simplest way to get the most mileage for most people quickly is with warm compresses.
Not touching afterwards. Sin tocar nada después, solo calor. My question is, for me it's not clear if I should prescribe just the warm compresses or the warm compresses and then expression at home.
Expression at home is virtually impossible because the person would have to put something behind their lid, and it's not a good idea. Not a good idea. The way to express at home is to squeeze like that, because that doesn't put any pressure on the eye. So just go across and squeeze as hard as you can. And that's what a lot of people do. But expression is best done in the office. It's best done in the office. Warm compresses are a great technique at home, and it's done every day. But your questioning is very good, because what you're asking is, what is the best way to treat a dry eye patient? And again, we're now learning that it's not simple. There are many complicating factors, because you have all these different factors that go into it. Now, how can you treat a dry eye patient who goes and sits in the computer for 8 hours a day and doesn't blink? Very difficult, because every day they go and they don't blink, and every day they become worse. So we have to get blinking better. And there's a lot, there are many other areas that have to be developed. We have to learn to get people to blink. We have to get the root cause. And if the root cause is the computer, we have many people who leave their job, they retire, or they just leave their job and they do something different. And the minute they get away from the computer, within 2 weeks, they're 75% better. Okay.
Lower the screen.
Yes, lower the screen prevents less desiccating stress. Right, absolutely. There's no question about that. Lowering the screen prevents less desiccating stress. But unfortunately, it also causes a lot of neck and postural problems. And, yeah. No. My wife will disagree.
You might send them your instructions on warm compresses. You might send them your
I'd be happy to.
instructions. If you give them your email address, if they want it, then you could send them the written instructions that you have.
Yeah, we'll be
for
happy to.
doing-
If you just write to me, we'll send you a lot of this material. But your questions are very good, because what's needed, the purpose of this lecture was not to give you a cookbook method of how to treat, because that would be 6 to 8 hours. The purpose of the lecture today was just to say, this is what's happened, this is what we have to think about, this is where the field is going, and we have to break the shackles that are around our legs for the way we think. And the questions that you're asking make me feel very good, because I can feel that I have made you think about how we break these shackles and how you do a better job for your patient. And that's all what it's about. Now, if you have a glaucoma patient and you have people who are using 4 medications on the eye, and they're putting this material on 10 times per day, and it's all preserved with benzalkonium chloride, okay, you're going to have ocular surface problems. And Meibomian glands aren't going to solve that, because it's overwhelming. So there's all these different things which go into it. But if we take the person who isn't being treated for glaucoma, who's 30 years or younger, or 35 years of age or younger, it's almost always just what I've said. But you have to rule out the other basic things. You have to rule out blepharoplasty. If they've had blepharoplasty, then that alters their blink, it alters the contact, etc. If the lids don't seal at night, they're going backwards, they're getting inflamed all night long. So you have this whole checklist of things which I will be happy to send to you that you really have to look at. But I really appreciate the question.
And along this line, Susana, I remember that before pressing, after the heat, before pressing, Donald used to ask the patient to look up when he was pressing the lower lid, so the cornea was not touched at any moment. And on the other side also, when he was pressing the upper lid, the patient was looking down to avoid touching the cornea.
He's right, that's what I do. I have the patient look up as high as they can.
In your studies, which is the percentage of patients who improve after LipiFlow treatment? In your studies?
In my own personal studies, not the big clinical
Your
trials,
studies.
anywhere from 100% to 0. If I treat somebody who has no acini, 0. If I treat somebody who has central nervous system pain, 0. If I treat somebody who has perfect glands, but they're obstructed, 80%, 90%, very, very, very high. And this has been a long, painful experience since we first met with you about this. Must be 6, 7 years ago. And all the management of the company is gone because the company has lost $90 million and nobody is very happy about losing all this money. And but if you pick the patient correctly, I would say that 75% or higher, which is much better than we get with anything else. But I should also point out to you that I think it's most important to treat the people who don't get better, because I think it's most important to treat individuals to prevent it from getting worse. So in the past 2 years, in the past 18 months, I've really changed my philosophy, because on several pilot studies, I now know what I should have known a long time ago, because we did it and published it in 1994 with cold expression. And that is that if you continue to express frequently, it gets better. So if you take an answer, now just shifting what you said to what you said, to what we were discussing, if you take an individual who has obstruction and you express them once, it may do a little bit. They may or may not feel it. But what I tell patients now who are chronic, if they've had the dry eye condition 3 or more years, I tell them that that our target, just like you have a target pressure for glaucoma. I taught a lot of people in my office, a lot of ophthalmologists from all over the world in the past 5, 6 years, maybe 60, 70 of them. And each one leaves me with a little bit of knowledge, because even as we're talking, we talk. And the whole concept of having a target for someone is very, very important. So if I look at an individual and after I've worked them up, and it may take more than one visit, and we reach a conclusion that they're chronic. Remember the new definition, it's chronic. So you have a chronic condition. You don't cure chronic conditions with one treatment of anything. If it's really chronic, there's anatomical changes, there's all of these difficulties. So what we explain to them, that our target is 25% better after a year, 50% better after a year, and I'm now writing up a a manuscript to give to patients that's a couple pages, which covers all of this, and we check off the box as to where they are. But if people have had it 10 years, and you put them, if a person has it 10 years, regardless of what their Sherman test is, regardless of what their breakup time is, if their symptom score is very high, and they've had it 10 years, and then when you put them into a goggle, they don't get better for even an hour or 2 hours sometimes, then you know that they have corneal hyperalgesia. So when you treat them, if you ask the question, after one treatment, how successful you will be? Placebo. That's the percentage you'll get. You'll get a placebo effect because you can't possibly improve that condition with one treatment. And the only way we get success with these difficult cases is to basically put them into 100% humidity 24 hours a day. They just have to wear sleep goggles, and they have to, all day long, wear some type of moisture chambers or be fitted with a scleral lens that does the same thing, if you can fit them. So those are the difficult ones, and they're probably the ones that you see, the real bad chronic ones where they've had it 5 or 10 years. But most of the doctors in the practice would see individuals who haven't had it that long, who are younger. And it's basically just beginning. So just like we showed you, the beauty of meibography is you can see how many glands are gone. And the minute you see 50% of all the acini are gone, you know that it's going to take a long time because they have to work 20 or 30%, they have to work 100% better to make up for the ones that are lost. And secondly, if you have corneal hyperalgesia and you have corneal nerve sensitivity, then the treatment has to be much more effective than if you don't have that. So it covers the whole spectrum, but I think the easiest way to think about it, and I should write this up, the easiest way to think about it is to think of individuals who have had it less than 3 years and those who have had it more than 3 years. The longer you've had it, the more persistent it is, the more difficult it is to get success in terms of the patient's report to you. And there's all the complicating factors of computer use and their sleep. In a study that we did of a group of individuals who comes to us who are very busy, and because of their religion, they only sleep 3 to 4 hours a night. And you check the young people who came into that organization, and they'd be fine. And 2 years later, dry, and the Meibomian gland starting to go. Sometimes the Sherman test would even be 0 without an anesthetic. Just nothing, absolutely nothing within 2 years. So sleep is a big factor, and we check that out in the form. So there's all these other factors, but again, you have to start somewhere. And at least now we're at, after 30 years, I really feel good because I can clinically manage most of the patients who come in and predict what's going to happen. And I can't grow glands back. You can't grow legs back. You can't grow tails back. They're gone, they're gone. But I think we're now at a stage where we can really start with meibography, with the metrics we have, of really beginning to prevent it from happening. And I think the evidence, within 2 years, the evidence that will be published will be just so clear that there'll be no arguing, that this is a progressive disease that happens because of the electronic age, because of inhibition of blinking, and that people on the computer are going to get that. So, and I'm sure people will develop various methods where the biofeedback system will get them to blink a lot better on a computer. So it's stimulating just to think about it.
Thank you, Don. Oral doxycycline has been used to treat blepharitis and to improve Meibomian gland secretion. But what about the new drug, the topical drug? I think it's azithromycin, is it improving meibomian gland secretion
What
in the
drug?
same way?
What drug?
Topical azithromycin.
Is that the one by Shire in the United
I
States?
think it's athacite.
Lefentagrast?
Athacite.
Yeah, I don't know the drug. I mean, I'm always honest.
It's a topical drug with the goal of improving meibomian gland secretion, but I don't know how it works.
Well, there's been a lot of, I would like nothing better than to have a drug that works, okay? I mean, it'd be wonderful. But do you remember azosite? Azosite. Azosite. What is the other name for azosite? Azosite was by Insight Chemical, by Insight, which is based out of North Carolina, and it's a macrolide, and I can't remember the other name, but it was boomed to be absolutely the best treatment for meibomian gland dysfunction there ever is, and they raised a lot of money. And they had all these tests, and there was article after article by all of the key opinion leaders. Azosite is the next generation. They ran an FDA trial, failed. They ran another FDA trial, failed, okay? So to the best of my opinion, there's now a second drug which has been approved by the FDA for dry eye, but there has never been anything except Lipoflow, which has been approved for treating meibomian gland dysfunction. Because again, as we kept talking and talking, because just this morning I asked you the same question, what would dissolve the plug? And what you told me is that it's not going to be easy because they'd all be toxic, because they have to be inorganic. Is that correct? Right. Yeah, and I have worked in that area myself about 5, 6, 7, no, more than that. It's probably closer to 12 years ago. And we got nowhere. And I had some of the best chemists in the world to take a look at the problem and take a look at the material that we take out. It's just not an easy problem. But that doesn't mean that someday it won't pass a study. But passing a study also doesn't mean it's going to work. You have to have 2 randomized, blind, controlled studies, one after the other, to really prove that something works.
Thank you.
So I basically believe that some of these new medications will undoubtedly make people feel better. They will undoubtedly make the flora on the eye better. They'll probably manage a lot of the exotoxins and other materials which come out of the meibomian glands. I have no doubt about that at all. But if we're talking about the root cause of how we restore it and how we get rid of it, the only way that I can see is removing the obstruction. And as I say, there's several papers now about probing where they use, the Maskin probe. And Steve claims he has great success with it. I see a fair number of, just like we all see, the failures of other people. And I'm sure that many doctors in Boston see many of my failures. Because as I said, I had 4,900 of them at one time that I made with expression. But I'm convinced that that the foundation, the real foundation of most dry eye in the beginning stages is meibomian gland obstruction leading to dysfunction.
Hola, mi pregunta es si en usuarios de lentes de contacto la disfunción de glándulas de meibomio se da antes o con más celeridad. Y si es así, ¿con qué tipo de lentes?
That's That really is an excellent question. And to think that contact lenses can really be hurting people is not pleasant to think about. Now, one reason why contact lenses can impede blinking, because you put a lens in the eye, if you have lid wiper epitheliopathy, if the lens is not wet, and the person inhibits and they don't blink as much, there's more desiccation. And if we go back to Salheiman's paper with mice, the more the humidity, the lower the humidity, the more glands you lose. So I think that's one reason. But I think the primary reason is quite different. I think the primary reason is that every contact lens that you put on the eye increases the rate of evaporation from the eye. And there's numerous papers on this. And the ideal contact lens would not increase the rate of evaporation from the eye. But why does it increase the rate of evaporation from the eye? Because the wonderful architecture of the ocular surface binds fluid and mucus and everything else to it. And the surface of the contact lens cannot do that. The surface of the contact lens basically cannot match the beautiful surface of the ocular surface, nowhere close. So if you look at the type of lipid layer with proper instrumentation on the eye, and then you put a contact lens in that eye and you look at it, it will not be nearly as good. So that means you have more desiccation. So I think a contact lens increases the desiccation. That having been said, the newer lenses have a remarkable decrease in evaporation. And without pushing brands, I have no interest in it at all. If you look at the model for it was Sieber and now it's Alcon, Total Daily 1. That lens there truly is more comfortable on many people. Now, if you take people who have no problem at all, it's no more comfortable. So if we take people who have no symptoms and we fitted them with this total lens, and then we fitted them with the other lenses, and there's all different kinds of other lenses, as you know, there would be no difference. They're all equally comfortable. But now when people become marginally dry, then this Total Daily 1 is better on more people than any other particular lens because it has more water inherently in its layers that's bound. And it's a very complicated system, and I don't completely understand it because I haven't spent the time researching it properly. But there's no question that it cuts the rate of evaporation from the eye. So the first person who made that observation was John Locke, L-O-C-K-E, and when he made it, he came to me and studied with me. He was a brilliant man. He was at Cardiff in Wales, and he's just a brilliant clinician and a brilliant academic. And he came and he was extremely interested in the meibomian glands. Then there was a paper by Ong, O-N-G, was a PhD student of his in Locke. And that first paper, I think, was published in 1969 or 1970, very, very early. And what he did is he said that that contact lenses made a dry eye and it decreased the function of meibomian glands. But it was a trend. It wasn't strongly statistically significant. And then later on, he did another study where he found that it did. And since then, there's probably been at least 20 studies the past 3 or 4 years, which clearly show that individuals who wear contact lenses have more meibomian gland dysfunction than individuals who don't. So again, that's another story that will require. It's going to require improvement of the tear film, and it's going to require improvement of the lenses. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
We're all happy. Is everyone ready to go home?
Any question?
Or eat?
vegades no, sovint no hi ha una manca de comunicació, per exemple, entre la indústria a nivell d'informàtica, no? Estem en un món rodejats de pantalles, no? I poder falten aplicacions o investigacions, per exemple, jo al meu establiment, a l'òptica, per exemple, amb persones amb ordinadors els recomano que posin salvapantalles molt seguits, que vagin canviant molt seguit per procurar parpadejar, o algun referent a la pantalla que cridi l'atenció perquè es faci parpadejar més, no? Jo no sé si a nivell d'indústria hi ha aplicacions en aquest sentit que afavoreixin el parpelleig, no? Sí, la meva reflexió era que si poder falta comunicació entre la indústria i el sector sanitari, no? Per exemple, a nivell informàtic, donat que estem rodejats de pantalles pràcticament, sovint el fet que la persona parpellegi més davant de les pantalles, segur que hi ha la tecnologia per... Jo, per exemple, en el meu cas, jo recomano utilitzar salvapantalles molt seguits, que canviïn seguit, o algun referent a la pantalla que cridi molt l'atenció i que la persona, quan ho vegi, parpellegi més, no? O detectors a la mateixa pantalla que quan la persona parpelleja la imatge es posés borrosa o s'apareixés, no? Vull dir que poder falta aquesta comunicació entre la indústria i el món sanitari, no? Com a reflexió, més que res.
No, and that's a very good comment. I guess everybody understood it. In the studies that have been done, if you flash up a symbol on the screen, blink now, it doesn't do any good. It's suppressed within 48 hours. So, because the level of intensity needed on a computer is so high that that's just ignored. Now, what we have done, and I'll be happy to send you the material, is we've done the same thing, but there are programs that they can get free or pay for on a computer where the computer will gradually dim. So the screen just dims until the point somebody can't see it, and they can set that. So they can set it so that the computer will shut off after 5 seconds of dimming, and will stay shut off for 5 seconds. And then when the person sees that, then they have no choice but to blink, okay? That has more success than anything. But unless the problem is that, at least we find the problem, is that unless somebody is in pain, unless somebody has a big problem, they won't do it. So a problem with glaucoma drugs has been proven. Many people say, I have no problem, I don't see the problem, I don't feel the problem. And at Cook County Hospital back in the 1970s, that's a big hospital in Chicago, and basically the social economic class is fairly low. They did a study where people would come back and they had social workers interviewing the ones who had lost visual field. So a person would be seen, and then 5 years later they would return. And when they returned, they had lost 75% of their field. So when they lost 75% of their field, the social worker would ask them why. And they'd say, well, the bottle was supposed to cure me. So they thought if they took one bottle of glaucoma medication, they would be solved for life. It's over 20 years ago. I was interested in solving the problem by having a big task force approach the problem, and I had it all set up at the University of California at Berkeley and one of the medical schools. The net result was I had the money funded from Fidelity. Fidelity is a big financial company, and they were willing to fund the study and figure out, take the School of Public Health, take the School of Optics, take the School of Psychology, take the Ophthalmology Department, take the Optometry Department, put them all together, spend $3 million a year and get the answer. And guess what happened? The lawyers said no. Because the lawyers knew that there would be a lot of lawsuits coming. Because that's what, if the results proved that the computers were causing a problem, then those who were trapped on computers and don't get enough rest, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right. We have to change the environment. We have to change the root cause. And I think as the evidence is published and becomes clearer and clearer, and as individuals specifically target studies to prove the point, and NIH gets behind it and funds it, then I think that will happen. I think it's going to happen in the next 10 years. Thank you. Thank you again very much.
Moltes gràcies.
Bueno, ahora el agradecimiento le haremos un pequeño refrigerio a los que se queden aquí con una copita de cava. Y yo creo que ha estado todo muy claro. O sea, las preguntas han sido excelentes. Os agradecemos a que habéis venido y ya sabéis, esta es vuestra casa. ¿De acuerdo? Venga pues.